I'm sure, when you go and speak, sometimes you hear these daunting and gloomy numbers, and you're the one that has to respond to them, and it must be very challenging. And yet, you've seen over your career the ups and downs and sort of the realities of what you're dealing with the parolee population. Can you talk to us about what you perceive the problem to be with the way the parole system works, and also give people an idea of how parole works or how it's supposed to work?
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me say that we in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, we recognize that what we've been doing is not working. Any system that has 69,000 inmates and 116 parolees, we know there's something that we're not doing right. Back in 2003, the legislature mandated that we make changes to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We also changed our name. Everyone knows for a long time we were called CDCR, and we were there to punish people. Now we put the R on our name, so we're going to have to show what that R actually means. Well, in 2003, we were looking at what we needed to do to really help prepare inmates for their release onto parole, and then once they were out on to parole, what can we do to provide them the services necessary to help them have a successful parole? So at that time, we identified one of our major problems, which was our reentry. No pre-parole planning. We lock people up, put them in custody, in prison for years, and some of them are in SHU for years. And then we open the gates and let them out and say, give them $200 and a bus ticket. And basically, in essence, we say, good luck to you. Now, we know that doesn't work, so we decided that what we had to do was to begin pre-parole, pre-release planning early on. So we took a look at a system that we can implement in the prison that would begin to do that. So we started what we call our parole planning and placement program, and it actually was very slow in implementing. We really started about the end of 2004. And that program works like this. We have a staff of parole agents and parole service associates in the prison 8 months before an inmate is released. Now, I want to remind you, in case somebody's saying, well, my son or daughter or my friend didn't get this service. Initially, when the program started, we only had funding and the ability to service first-time releasees and parole violators with a new term. So those were the only people actually getting pre-release plans. So what happens is the parole agent and the parole service associate, they actually have a face-to-face interview with the parolee, again, 8 months prior to them getting out, and they talk about what their plans are, and they also apply a evidence-based assessment tool, which we call CompStat. And that assessment tool, once they get all the information from the parolee, they look in their C file, they get all their criminal history, then that evidence-based tool will give them a risk score, and also it will talk about what their needs are. So no longer do we have to rely solely on an agent's subjective, and I'm not saying that negative, I'm saying that's all we had at the time. No longer do we have to rely on their subjective opinions as to what a parolee or an inmate being on to parole actually needs. We have a social worker who's part of that team. The social worker is in the community, and that social worker's job is to begin, once the assessment is done and the needs are determined, that social worker begins to prepare those services necessary for that parolee when he or she comes out into the community. Now, a lot of people have said, well, why didn't you put the social worker in the prison with the team? Well, we need the social worker out here in the community, networking with all of you community-based organizations to set up the program prior to the inmate getting out. Because the issue really has to do with, there should not be a system where a parolee an inmate walks out of the door, doesn't know what to do, has nowhere to go, has no hope, because what happens? They revert to what they know, and that's surviving. So we're trying to cut down on the inmate having to determine what they need to do the day they get out and make sure those services are in place. Also, another component that we determined was necessary, you've heard all the statistic about We sent back 118,000 parolees for technical violations. That story is a little deeper than most people tell because they don't know because they're not out there doing that. Some of the parolees we sent back for technical parole violations is actually based on public safety. We've attempted to program, they won't program. What on the surface appears to be a simple refusal to go into a drug treatment program is not the whole story. So I just want to make that clear. However, we recognize that we do return too many people back to custody because we did not have the services in the community to assist them. So we started what we call a sanction program. Well, everyone heard that Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, my boss actually, decided that the program wasn't working. So we don't have the alternative sanction programs in place currently. However, we decided that we would take our focus in another direction. We still have some programs. We have what we call the Preventing Crime program. And this program actually has a residential multi-service program connected with it. You have one here in San Francisco. Also, we have a in-custody drug treatment program. That is a 60-day program where a parolee goes in custody in they're going in Santa Clara actually right now. And they can dry out and go through a drug education program. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, they're in custody, but their parole is not suspended, so there's no adverse effect to them. It gives them an opportunity to dry out. It gives them an opportunity to have some drug education. And additionally, we have connected with that drug treatment once they get out. We had that program once before, but the problem with it, we would put them in custody to dry out and then once again open the door and say, don't use again, don't mess up, and we didn't provide any drug treatment. So now the aftercare component, we've really seen some success with that program. Additionally, when a parolee is released in California, that parolee has to attend our police and corrections team program. It's called PAC. PAC is a parole orientation meeting designed to connect parolees with community-based organizations. So once that parolee hits the street, they have to attend a PAC program. Normally the programs here in San Francisco, it's every other week. And at the PAC program, we have community-based organizations that talk about their programs, and they begin to connect immediately with the parolee. Even though we have plans in place for parolee, we tell them where to go with the pre-release program. Some of them are very apprehensive because it's outside of their comfort zone. So we found that a lot of them wouldn't attend, but if they come to PAC in an environment they feel comfortable in community-based organizations who are there saying, I'm attempting to help you, it actually allieves some of their anxieties. We have a lot of other programs that we're trying to put in place. We're trying to expand our computer literacy lab program. This allows parolees in the community who need to increase their grade point average, or they need to learn how to read, they need to get their GED, then they can attend this program. Currently, there's not one in San Francisco. I'm having dialogue with our programs unit, and we're attempting to get one. We recognize that we have a long way to go in the California Department of Correction. I tell you, everywhere I go, and this has been my story, I feel like the girl who came to the party nobody liked. You know, I don't mean that personally, but I mean in terms of with the Department of Corrections, we really recognize that we haven't done a good job. We're working with community-based organizations to improve. The Department of Corrections really was a closed system. No one really knew about us. When I started 20 some odd years ago, I would say I was from the parole division. No one really knew about us. And to be honest with you, I think that's the way people liked it for a long time, because people wanted to say crime is not in my backyard. And now we have people like yourself and people that I'm sitting at this table with who coming to us saying, how can we help you? And that's what we need, because the Department of Correction cannot do it on our own. We don't have the resources, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have the services. We need all of you as partners, and that's what we're attempting to do. And I hope before I retire that I can come to a meeting and I can talk about all the wonderful things that we're doing and have the statistics to back us up. Thank you.